Miss Hall was there. I think Laura was down there too in this thing, but. Yeah, he's online. He's online. Yeah. Good morning. If I can get everybody's attention, we'll call the General Fund Committee to order this morning. I see 9 o'clock on my clock anyway. I think the one in the back of the room is wrong. So, and I'll ask Ms. Harper if you'll call the roll, please, ma'am.
Representative Reynolds.
Here.
Representative South.
Here.
Representative Hall. Representative Blackshear.
Here.
Representative Bracy.
Here.
Representative Easterbrook.
Here.
Representative Kitchens.
Here.
Representative Lamb.
Here.
Representative Lee.
Here.
Representative McCampbell.
Here.
Representative Mooney.
Here.
Representative Sorrells.
Here.
Representative Sells.
Here.
Representative Warren. Representative Witt. You have 13. You have 4.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate that. And I think we've got Representative Witt online with us today. I think he's tuning in. So we hope to see him next week. And welcome to all the new members this new quadroom, and appreciate you joining us. And I know you've seen a lot of information in the last few weeks, and I honestly think I've kind of lost my voice after I think 7 briefings on these bills, and I really appreciate all the participation in it. And the joint caucus meeting yesterday I thought went very well, and if there was an hour and a half of discussions, then it was well worth our time to go through that. So certainly appreciate it. And I might want to mention too, also, I appreciate all the members that joined me in thanking Steve Klaus yesterday. And those, obviously you weren't there, but he received a standing ovation by the members, and we appreciate his 10 years of service to this committee. And he's certainly been an ally along the way the last few months. So certainly appreciate that. So with that said, to move forward with the bills, and I'm going to turn the chair over to Co-Chair South.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Clerk, will you call up the first bill?
Representative Reynolds, supplemental appropriation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So HB 1 is the ARPA, or the American Rescue Plan Act bill, allocating $1,681,797.72 in federal funds. And I'm going to run through this breakdown if you'll bear with me. I know we've been through this several times, but certainly for the public, want to go through this real quickly. So $339,175,000 to support the delivery of health care and related services to the citizens of Alabama, up to $660 million for eligible water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, $55 million for eligible programs or services in response to the negative economic impacts of the public health emergency, $5 million for response and mitigation expenses related to the coronavirus pandemic, and then up to $1,006,797.72 related to administrative costs. With that, I'll call for a favorable, Mr. Chair.
Your motion.
Motion.
I got a motion by Representative Lee,
Second.
second by Representative Blackshear. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Mooney.
I apologize for asking a couple of questions again. I know I've
That's okay.
spoken quite often with our chairman, who's been very kind to work with us. I raised some questions in February when we had our meetings, and I still have those questions. Is it the middle mile on broadband, or is it the last mile on broadband? Because 2 different answers have come from 2 different officials in the executive branch. One saying last mile, one saying middle mile. That's concerning that we don't know the answer to that. On the top of page 6, we're talking about some programs. It says programs that provide services to victims of domestic violence. Had not noticed this until, I guess it was early this morning after midnight reading things or whatever, but why just domestic violence and not all violence or all violent crimes? The violent crime situation in our state is on the rise since 2020. The victims of domestic violence are not having their needs met. Clearly, we're being asked by organizations that work with them to find ways to try to help them. So I don't quite understand why that. And then the same thing that I mentioned before, I have a great deal of issue with the fact that these funds will not be expended until the end of 2026, but we will not come back to this body, the legislature of the state of Alabama, that is constitutionally given the responsibility to appropriate funds and make sure that those funds are used in a correct manner. But it would go to 5 people. They're worthy people, obviously, very worthy. But it is the individual and corporate responsibility of our body to make these decisions. I share those questions. I don't know that there are answers to them, but I share those because in good conscience, I have to ask them. Thank you, sir.
No, I appreciate that, and do allow me to respond. I know we've had a lot of conversations about this, and you sat through the same briefings that the body did, and I appreciate your participation in that. And certainly, as you know, as well as I do, that the broadband, it goes by the Alabama Digital Expansion Authority, which this body assisted and put in place, had involvement in the language of it. I think I realize you say we don't come back to this body, but that's not really accurate. You know, as you know, and many people on this committee serve on the ARPA Oversight Commission, and we have had numerous meetings. I guess every year we have had meetings, and we call those agencies in front of us, and they stand there at that dais, and they explain to us how they expend the funding. I think you also are aware that dealing with the MOAs is where this legislative body puts that wording in place to control those funds moving forward. And so I think that's the voice of the legislature. And I'm not sure who voted yes or no on that, but I think this body put that in place. I think it's been very effective. And kudos to my colleagues that really looked across the table during all this conversation and said, we didn't want to make final decisions on this round of ARPA money until we had an oversight commission meeting, and we heard from those and got updates on the capital projects and the broadband and all the expenditures going forward. And then finally, as you know, that's not our date set by December of 2026. Those are federal guidelines, and we must adhere to them. But I appreciate your questions.
Ms. Hall?
I just want to follow up in terms of the comments made by the previous speaker to say that as we had questions about this, sometimes a specific agency was named that would be the benefactor of the funds. And I think that was a concern that I had. Then how do we make sure there are other agencies that are similar to those? And I used housing as an example of housing for individuals who may be needing housing, reentry, those types of things. So the point is well taken, and I think we just want to make sure that there is an opportunity that we don't go in, because all of us didn't have all of the hearings, all of the information, but that we have an opportunity to make sure that those areas that we feel have an opportunity based on the programs that are listed, that they are considered and have an opportunity to be funded.
Well, and that's a good point, and really kind of goes back to Representative Mooney's comments about domestic violence. You know, early on in the verbiage, we began to put some of those organizations, and we realized that we may do exactly that, Ms. Hall. We may exclude someone that maybe we did not think about. So we then went back to the table and really focused on the language, because what I heard from my colleagues really all the way back to December was, you know, Rex, we want to see something in our communities. We want to help the boots on the ground organizations that have worked through this pandemic and served our Alabama citizens. And we need to be able to point at that in our community and tell our citizens that. And I think we've accomplished this by leaving the language very broad so that any of the organizations that fit within those guidelines can submit applications, whether it be with a DECA or ADM, or even the Department of Senior Services. So I agree with you, Ms. Hall.
So I've got a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any noes? So the bill passes with a favorable report. Ms. Clerk, will you call up the second bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On House Bill 2 by Representative Reynolds, the Alabama Trust Fund supplemental appropriation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 2 is authorize the appropriation of $59,997,772 from the general fund to the Alabama Trust Fund for debt obligations of the People's Trust Act. You know, we were ahead on our payments, so that's about a $13,500,000 debt service that we do annually, and I think it's a very conservative thing to do. And again, and Chairman Albritton and I had this conversation with the LSA and the executive team early on, and I think it's just says volumes that this body stood up and did what we said we would do and repay that debt.
Mr. Mooney? I got a motion. Do I hear a second? Second by Representative Kitchens. Any other further comment or questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any noes? With that, the bill gets a favorable report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You turn the chair back over
Yes,
to me?
sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And thank you to the committee. Thank you to the body. Really a lot of work done on this, and I appreciate everybody's involvement in it. This is probably the last round of federal funding we feel like that will come through this body. As we know, there's probably almost $1 billion in federal dollars that's still going to come to the state of Alabama and additional federal funds and go directly to a lot of the agencies that we continue to help on these bills. So appreciate it very much, and we stand in adjournment. Oh, I'm sorry.
I would just like to suggest, if possible, that you open the floor for co-signers when you do the bill.
Yes, ma'am. Be glad to. And I know a lot of you got to sign the bill, but some did not. Be glad to do that. Thank you for that. Motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second.